Welcome back, everybody. We're now on the final leg of our megalithic marathon today, and we now have our keynote speaker for Saturday, Graham Hancock, who's going to be discussing themes from some of his earlier books. The title of the talk is A Species with Amnesia. Many of you know Graham's work through his documentaries, through his incredible historical investigations and the numerous books that he's written. And also recently he's got into novel writing as well. And today he's going to be exploring the lost civilization from prehistory. So please give a warm welcome to Graham Hancock.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for being here. This is indeed a marathon, exhausting day. And I'll do my best not to just sort of fall over on stage, and I'm sure you guys will do your best to stay awake back there. One of the good things about being last is I can go on a little bit longer. I've got an hour, but you know, I think maybe 2 or 3 hours might do it. I'll do my best to keep it tight. I've been involved in these mysteries for more than 20 years. I've had the incredible privilege and opportunity to explore and experience some of the most majestic monuments left for us to puzzle over by our ancestors. In all my travels and all my adventures, I've been accompanied and buoyed up by the presence of my wonderful, wonderful wife, Santha, who is as far as I'm concerned, the best human being on the planet, and I am so lucky to have her as my partner. She's been with me every step of the way, taken every risk with me, including some very extreme scuba diving as we got on to Underworld. The talk I'm going to give tonight will range across material that is in all 3 of these books. So if you want further information on them, that's the place to look. Unfortunately, none of my books are available here, but they can be obtained, of course. This is our beautiful garden of a planet, as we are familiar with it today. This majestic work given to us as a theater of experience to learn and to grow and to develop within. How incredibly privileged we are to be born in human bodies and to live on such a garden floating in the universe. It hasn't always looked the way it looks today. If you go back to the last ice age, which reached its maximum about 21,000 years ago, not so long ago, really, just the blink of an eye, you'll find that ice caps that are 2 miles deep sit on top of North America and also on top of Northern Europe. Now, all the water that's frozen into ice in those ice caps had to come from somewhere, and where it came from was the world's oceans. So as a result, during the Ice Age, the levels of the world ocean were 400 feet lower than they are today. All that water had come out of the ocean, it had been frozen into those giant ice caps, and when they melted, it went back into the ocean and sea level rose. So there's our familiar map of the world with its familiar contours. But if you go back to the last glacial maximum 21,000 odd years ago, the world really does look quite different. For example, there was no Red Sea. It was all dry land. Nor was there any Arabian Gulf. It was all dry land as well. Australia was a much vaster continent than it is today, and Southeast Asia, now an archipelago of islands and the Malaysian peninsula, was at that time a giant continent-sized landmass. All of the coastlines of the world were extended much further than they are today. And altogether, 27 million square kilometers, that's about 10 million square miles of land, went under the ocean when the sea levels rose. That's roughly the equivalent of the size of Europe and China added together. Now, although the meltdown did take place over 10,000 years, there were within it 3 or 4 major episodes of flooding when you could, in some cases, get as much as a 30-foot rise in sea level pretty much overnight. Now, you have to consider what a 30-foot overnight rise in sea level would do to our civilization today if it were to happen. I'm sure we've all seen the horrific and troubling images of the tsunami in Japan. And we can see the catastrophe that is unleashed by nature just by a temporary rise in sea level. So we have to imagine something like that, but on a global scale and permanent, and consider what it did to our ancestors and what effects it may have had upon them. I don't believe it's an accident that there are more than 2,000 flood myths pretty much all around the world. Memories of a gigantic global flood that almost wiped out mankind. Most archaeologists and historians are not very impressed with flood myths, and they take the view that these were little local events, perhaps a river flooded its banks, little local events which were then elaborated out by our superstitious ancestors who imagined it was a global flood. But I find that a completely unnecessary explanation, since we know that there was gigantic global flooding during the 10,000 years at the end of the Ice Age. And it seems to me highly probable that the world's legacy of flood myths are a memory of what happened at the end of the Ice Age. One of those flood myths was preserved by Plato, and that's the myth of Atlantis. He said he got it through his family line from the Greek lawmaker Solon, who had visited Egypt and had been told in Egypt of the existence of a high civilization in deep antiquity that had been destroyed in a global flood accompanied by tremendous earthquakes and volcanic activities. And this civilization, Plato said, was globally distributed, although focused on an island which he appeared to locate in the Atlantic. And he said that in a single terrible day and night, it was utterly obliterated. And that mankind was forced to begin again like children with no memory of what went before, that we were indeed a species with amnesia. The flood myth is found in India, where we have the Indian Noah figure, Manu, who is preserved by the god Vishnu to repopulate the planet, much in the way that Noah does in our Western flood story. And in Greece, it's the story of Deucalion and Pyrrha, who ride out the flood in a huge box. And again, their role is to repopulate the earth and to reestablish civilization. Similar stories have come down from the ancient Maya, who spoke of cyclical destructions and rebirths of the earth, and indeed the Aztec civilization as well. And of course, we all know the Noah story from the Bible. Now, it's well accepted by scholars that the Noah story is simply a later recension of an earlier story that came